A major trade relationship has reportedly collapsed and California farmers are paying the price. An estimated $12 billion a year in agricultural exports is now in jeopardy, cutting straight into one of the most critical food-producing regions in the United States. This didn't start with a drought. It didn't start with crop failure. It didn't start with farmers making bad decisions. It started with politics, diplomacy, and decisions made far away from the fields. Decisions that have left thousands of farms scrambling to survive. Right now, as this unfolds, roughly 8,500 California farms are facing a crisis that isn't theoretical and isn't distant. It's immediate, it's financial, and for many families, it's existential. So what exactly happened behind the scenes? How did California's most important agricultural export market suddenly become inaccessible? Why were the people who grow America's food left exposed? And where is the leadership as billions in trade disappear? That's what this investigation is about. Before we go any further, do one thing right now, hit the like button. Subscribe to this channel, drop a comment below with your thoughts, and share this video with anyone who needs to understand what's really happening, because this story matters. California produces roughly 1/3 of the nation's vegetables and nearly 2/3 of its fruits and nuts. That's not abstract economics. That's the food you eat every day, the produce in your refrigerator, the almonds in your pantry, the avocados on your toast. And right now, the largest export market for California agriculture has reportedly slammed its doors shut. Mexico, California's top agricultural trading partner, has canceled or severely restricted trade agreements that industry sources say were worth an estimated $12 billion annually to California farmers. $12 billion. Not a projection, not a worst-case scenario. According to trade analysts, that's the real value of agricultural exports that are now cut off or frozen. Across the state, equipment is sitting idle in fields that should be alive with harvest activity. Crops that took months to grow suddenly have nowhere to go. Families who have worked the same land for 4 generations are doing impossible calculations: how long they can keep paying workers, how long before the bank calls the loan, how long before they lose everything. And while all of this is happening, the official who campaigned on economic leadership and prosperity, according to multiple reports, silence. This is the investigation mainstream media barely touches. And what you're about to hear should concern every American who eats food, who cares about economic stability, and who wonders why grocery prices keep climbing while farmers go bankrupt. The trade relationship that built an economy. For nearly 3 decades, California and Mexico built one of the most productive agricultural trade relationships in North America. It wasn't just beneficial. Economists say it was essential. Industry analysts estimate California exported approximately $12 billion worth of agricultural products to Mexico every year. Dairy products, tree nuts, fresh vegetables, wine, beef, processed foods. Mexico wasn't just a buyer. Sources familiar with trade flows say it was the single largest destination for California agricultural exports, accounting for roughly 30 to 35% of the state's total export market. That relationship made sense for both sides. California farmers gained reliable access to nearly 130 million consumers. Mexican families gained consistent access to high-quality food products. Trade economists projected continued growth. Some forecasts suggested annual trade values could reach $15 billion within 5 years, and potentially $20 billion by the early 2030s. This trade supported an estimated 75,000 jobs across California. Not just farm laborers, truck drivers, packing facility workers, processors, cold storage operators, port workers, administrative staff, logistics coordinators. Economists estimate that for every dollar in direct agricultural exports, another 50 to 80 cents rippled through California communities. In places like Fresno, Tulare, Kern County, agriculture isn't part of the economy, it is the economy. Industry sources say some Central Valley regions depended on Mexican exports for 40 to 50% of agricultural revenue. Dairy farmers alone were shipping roughly $1.5 billion in cheese, butter, and milk powder to Mexico every year. Almond growers, and remember, California produces about 80% of the world's almonds, were exporting $800 million to $1 billion annually. Wine producers in Napa and Sonoma built distribution networks valued at $300 to $400 million per year in Mexican sales. This stability allowed multi-generational farms to plan for the future. Young farmers took over family operations. Banks financed expansion. The system worked until it didn't. How it all collapsed. In recent months, diplomatic tensions between the United States and Mexico escalated over issues completely unrelated to agriculture: immigration policy, border enforcement, water disputes, energy regulations, political rhetoric on both sides. Trade experts say these tensions poisoned relationships that took decades to build. California agriculture wasn't part of the fight, but according to sources familiar with negotiations, it became collateral damage. By late 2025, Mexican trade officials reportedly signaled that long-standing agricultural agreements could be reviewed. Industry insiders say the warning signs were subtle and then suddenly decisive. According to multiple trade publications, Mexican officials announced the cancellation or severe restriction of California agricultural import agreements effective within weeks. No transition period, no adjustment window. California farmers had built entire business models around Mexican market access, contracts, distribution networks, decades of trust, and according to agricultural economists, that infrastructure cannot be replaced overnight. An almond farmer in Kern County doesn't grow almonds and hope for the best. They sign contracts months, sometimes years in advance. They invest in irrigation, fertilizer, labor, and equipment based on guaranteed sales. Now those contracts reportedly mean nothing. Mexican buyers, according to industry sources, are canceling orders or claiming force majeure. The farmer is left with hundreds of tons of product, no buyer, and no recovery path. Analysts estimate losses per almond operation could range from $500,000 to over $2 million. And trade experts warn this isn't temporary. Once Mexican buyers replace California suppliers with Chilean, Australian, Spanish, or Italian producers, those relationships may never revert. For farms that relied on Mexico for 30 to 50% of revenue, that's potentially fatal. Real Families, Real Collapse, a third-generation dairy farm in Tulare County, invested roughly $4 million in new facilities to expand cheese production for Mexico. About 60% of its output, nearly $3 million annually, went south of the border. When restrictions hit, deliveries stopped. Domestic markets were already saturated. International alternatives weren't available fast enough. Within weeks, bankruptcy became a real possibility. A mid-sized fruit distributor in Fresno that moved $8 million worth of strawberries, peaches, and citrus annually into Mexico employed around 150 people. When the trade halted, the business model collapsed. Layoffs began almost immediately. The company may not survive the season. And then there are the towns: Delano, Madera, Porterville, places where agriculture employs 30 to 50% of the workforce. When farms collapse, workers lose jobs, local businesses lose customers, equipment dealers lose sales, banks see defaults, tax revenue falls. Economists estimate that for every farm job lost, another 1.5 to 2 jobs disappear in related industries. If exports to Mexico drop 80 to 90%, projections show 50,000 jobs at risk statewide. These aren't statistics. They're families, mortgages, health insurance. Farms passed down since the 1950s, at risk because of diplomacy gone wrong. The perfect storm. This collapse didn't happen in isolation. California agriculture was already under pressure. Water restrictions reduced productive capacity by 10 to 15% in some regions. Regulatory and labor costs increased operating expenses by 15 to 25% over 5 years. Export infrastructure bottlenecks added another 5 to 10% in costs. Farmers survived because Mexican exports made the math work. Remove that revenue and the entire equation collapses. Meanwhile, international competitors are filling the gap. And once those markets lock in, California may be shut out for years. Agricultural economists estimate total export losses could reach $15 to $18 billion when ripple effects are included. This is real-time economic collapse. The silence from leadership. Here's what makes this worse. California's governor campaigned on economic leadership and job protection. Yet when farmers face catastrophe, there's been no meaningful public response, no emergency economic relief, no acknowledgement proportional to the crisis. Industry groups report requesting meetings for weeks. Analysts have issued warnings. Farm families have spoken out. According to those same sources, nothing. Policies that raise costs remain in place while the markets that made them survivable disappear. That contradiction is impossible to ignore. What comes next? If current conditions hold, $1 billion in annual trade is gone. 8,500 farms are directly impacted. 50,000, 70,000 jobs are at risk. Entire Central Valley communities face collapse. And the long-term damage could be permanent. Reduced production, lost markets, higher food prices, weaker food security. This isn't partisan. It's about leadership during crisis. Farmers don't need speeches. They need intervention. They need relief. They need coordination. If this investigation helped you understand what's really happening, subscribe and hit the bell. Drop a comment below. Is this a warning for other states? What happens when politics destroys food systems? Share this video, because the system that feeds America is under threat, and this story isn't over.